So a slow clap is a very odd sociological event. It happens when an individual starts to slowly and methodically clap, so everybody else in the audience starts to join in and create this massive applause. But what are the contributing factors that make people feel so encouraged to jump in and create this massive applause? How's it going, everybody? My name is Evan, and I'm going to be talking to you about the bandwagon form of persuasion and how it's a very powerful tool used in many facets of life. So this form of persuasion is done by influencing an individual by inducing some sort of emotional or sociological pressure that could sway somebody to make a decision or behave a certain way that may even be irrational from their own personal headspace and values. Regardless, they'll feel the need to jump in the bandwagon and join the masses. As some sort of herd mentality, as a part of human psychology, we just react this way. So a few aspects of this form of persuasion we'll be covering is how it's used in politics and how political leaders utilize this form of persuasion, how businesses use this as a marketing scheme to make people buy their product, some future research that we could conduct in order to understand this form of persuasion a little bit better, how it's used in smaller scales such as group studies so we can have a better grasp on how it's conducted on even larger scales. So Adolf Hitler was actually known to use this form of persuasion a lot in his reign of power. So the Nazi regime came out with this mainstream propaganda film called Triumph of the Will that spread all across Europe. And in this propaganda film, it showed Adolf Hitler with massive rallies of a sea of people. It appeared to look like as if he had millions and millions of people following his lead. And in this film, they panned to every citizen and made sure to include every demographic to make it feel as everybody was included in supporting Adolf Hitler. So he was able to garner enough support to create one of the biggest atrocities known in our recent history. Without any actual concrete evidence, people jumped on the bandwagon to support Adolf Hitler, and he made it a point to appeal to this form of persuasion by having this film and other forms of rallies showing his support. Moreover, even in a global pandemic, Donald Trump is trying to show his support by having thousands of people attend his rallies and show off how he still has support and try and get people on his bandwagon to join his lead as well. So as we can see, many political leaders utilize this form of persuasion in their methodologies. Moving on to the microcosms of how bandwagoning is used in the social sphere. So in a smaller setting within groups, we're going to try and uncover the group thought or herd mentality within specific friends groups. So a peer-reviewed article published by the European Journal of Social Psychology published an experiment they conducted with 3 different groups. You had one group that was friends outside the experiment. You had one group that just only appeared as if they would be socially acceptable. They were of the same demographic, age, and what they said was physical attraction. And then you had another group that was complete strangers across different demographics that appeared that they would not essentially hang out outside the experiment. So they gave scenarios to each of the groups and gave them a certain time limit to give their answers of the decisions that their group would make in this specific scenario. So they basically found that the friends group and the socially of the same class group were found to make the decisions more decisively compared to the strangers. So why is this? A very interesting experiment that we could compound and deconstruct a little later. But the friends within the friends group that made the quick decisions may not seem to share ideology. They may abandon their own ideology in order to assimilate into the group to make it appear more cohesive. So within this topic, we could relate it to the loyalty one has to his friends group as well, and relate that to the support one has for their country and nationalism, as far as, what we're talking about with Hitler and his support, as well as patriotism in America. So there appears to be a certain sociological pressure to behave in some sort of conforming manner in order to fit into a group to maintain this sort of cohesive identity. And in the strangers group of that same study, they all appeared to maintain their own personal identity and ideology and want to make their own decisions. And we could relate that into macrocosms of understanding how this form of persuasion works as well. So looking how business used this as a marketing scheme to make consumers buy their product, and also some further case studies and research. We're going to look into how Spotify, which is a very popular music platform, published a statistic where they were studying listeners' behavior. So they found that a listener was more inclined to listen to a new artist that they've never heard before, that had more streams and listeners, compared to a new artist that has less streams and listeners. So the listener would be more inclined to listen to somebody just because of other people showing support for that artist, even though they may end up liking the one with less support. So this shows that people have some sort of unknown trust for other people in many facets of life, including the entertainment and music. So here we see celebrities and entertainers and politicians trying to create maybe a fabricated form of following to garner this same sort of persuasion technique. We see Forbes published an article in 2013 that exposed Mitt Romney and Justin Bieber for padding their stats in social media. So they found that they were actually having fake accounts follow their Instagram and Facebook to make it appear as if they had a bigger following than they actually had, to appeal to this bandwagoning form of persuasion. So moreover, we're going to look into a Northwestern University study into the marketing scheme to appeal to this form of persuasion. They studied 400 million consumers and studied their behaviors. They found that the consumers would only purchase products with 40 or more reviews, regardless of any actual research they were conducting on whether the product was within what they were looking for or not. They only relied on the other consumers' behaviors and reviews. Essentially, consumers want to fit into society, therefore they will buy what everyone else is buying, whatever the brand name, shoes, belts, clothing, etc., in order to fit in. They will not buy anything under 40 reviews. It's kind of an acceptability to be popular within this marketing scheme. Furthermore, the Federal Trade Commission found that companies were actually using fake accounts to build their review numbers to kind of reach that 40 review limit, that, to make it so people would actually buy their product. So here that we could see that this form of persuasion is all around us in entertainment, marketing, and politicians. And we have actual data to support this fact. So how effective is this persuasion strategy? So a book created by David A. Diatley states a couple experiments done with different students at a university. So within this experiment in the book, it states, number one, in the first study, they conducted an experiment where they had students within the study understood what was going on, and then there was other people in the study that did not understand what was going on. So the researcher asked the students to tell them essentially how many lines were on a piece of paper. And the students that knew what was going on said the wrong answer. And the students that didn't know what was going on agreed with the students that said the wrong answer and also said the wrong answer. Even though the lines were blatantly right in front of their face, they chose the wrong answer about how many lines were on the piece of paper in order to be more agreeable to the masses. This is extremely viable and blatant experimental study to show the proof of this form of persuasion and how it actually works, even when the facts are right in front of people's faces. Furthermore, the next study of this within the book created by David, he states that they went around the same campus and they asked people who they were voting for in the upcoming elections. So the students were then told that the specific politician actually had a huge lead and was on track to win. So the students would abandon their own political leanings and show their support for whoever had the bigger support base. No matter what political platform, they found that each student would only show their support for whoever had the lead, showing that people would only vote for whoever the masses are voting for. So basically, it's extremely evident that the bandwagoning effect works. People are willing to be incorrect and abandon their own ideology and their beliefs in order to be agreeable with the masses. So what are some factors that make it work? And what's some future research that we could conduct in order to understand this a little bit better? So within the microcosm lens, looking at group thought at the study that we were talking about earlier, we found it evident that people feel pressure to be agreeable and cohesive in order to maintain that identity of their friends group and to appear more socially acceptable in society. So future research could be at what cost? At what cost are people choosing to fit into their friends group? Are people choosing to abandon their own identity and beliefs in order to fit in? Well, a personal story for me is that in high school, I found myself losing my own identity and losing who I was in order to fit in with everybody else. So I chose to keep my own ideology and identity, and I found myself to be more lonely. Therefore, that there is a lose-lose situation in this scenario where you could either abandon your own ideologies and identity in order to fit in and make your friends group more cohesive, or keep your identity and be more depressed and lonely. So this is why people feel more inclined to join the masses and jump on the bandwagon. It's because they don't want to be left behind. So, from a slow clap at the end of a poorly made film within the cold airs of a movie theater, to the mass genocidal acts of an entire country and its people, appeals to the bandwagon persuasive technique is an interesting facet of life, to say the least. We uncovered how we could influence each other through the guise of popularity in different areas such as economic interest, entertainment, and political leanings. Many questions still remain on this topic, but the uncomfortable truth is definitely revealed that we lose sight of ourselves when society tells us to.